Hey Lindsay, how are you?
Very well. And yourself, Jamie?
I'm grand, yeah. I'm just going to stroll around and have a coffee while we're having this chat. That's all right.
Sounds good. Just thought it would be good if we start off by giving us a little bit of history about yourself, Jamie.
Gosh, yeah, for sure. So from London originally, where when back in the day when all my mates were going off to do their work experience, I started up a business and I've never had a job since. So for good or bad. I think one of the biggest successes I had, just to keep this all short, is I set up a company in 1990, late 97, with Lord George Milford Haven, and the company was called Syra Utilities. We set it up in Harrow, and it was a very, very small marketing company. We grew that company into a 500 staff plus business, and we were in the deregulated gas market. And that company, long story short, became newswitch.com, and that was sold in 2006 for £210 million. Ever since then, I've been buying and selling businesses, setting up companies, working on strategy. Strategy was my thing at Newswitch or at Syra. So yeah, I've been doing this kind of stuff for 25 years now. So yeah, so I've got the hang of it.
Yeah, sounds good. And Rise Strategies, what kind of things does Rise do, Jamie?
Okay, yeah. So Rise is designed because there are loads and loads of small business owners who focus day to day on running their business through organic growth, and that's like getting one customer at a time. And the ebb and flow of any business is you get a customer, lose a customer, get a customer, lose a customer. And the reality is, and I found this by doing this myself, is that the quickest possible way to grow any business is through acquisitions. And so you grow by acquiring customers, by acquiring assets, and so on. And in the context of the conversation about virtual mergers, virtual mergers is actually an easier way to do it. It's a much more targeted way of working with companies in specific industries, and that's what Rise do. So we help companies on acquisitions, in which we partner on those deals, and we also structure virtual mergers, which means the companies can get involved in our virtual mergers and get to a point where they're their value of their company is much higher. So I guide that through, and the team guide that through.
Okay, sounds interesting. So do you work with startups or seed funding?
No, we don't. We focus on businesses that are established. They've got a customer base. They've got a business. The ebb and flow of business. They may have had a worse year last year than the year before. For virtual mergers, that doesn't really matter because we're talking about going forward. But no, we don't get involved in seed round funding or anything like that.
Okay, thanks for that. And so just this brings some clarity. What's the difference between a merger and a virtual merger?
Okay, good question. So when companies merge, they integrate their businesses. So it's basically crashing two businesses together and sometimes hoping for the best. But that's quite tricky because in any deal that I work in, and the people, colleagues in the industry that I work with, culture comes first. If your people don't like their people, there's going to be a mess. And one of the things I find a lot in traditional mergers where companies do that integration is that you've always got two CEOs, two CFOs, two CEOs, two CMOs. You've got all these things, and that creates ego problems. So what we do with a virtual merger is we take all of the good stuff of a merger. So that's cross-selling opportunities, that's increase in value in revenues, and aggregating the revenues to create value and so on. But the owner of the company who is within the virtual merger, nothing changes other than the desire at some stage in the future to exit. And that's basically the focus of a virtual merger. So it's a lot more freedom, it's a lot more de-risked, and it's a lot easier to become involved in. And our partners, the people in the virtual mergers, the kind of people I guess who'll be watching this video, they remain in control right up to the last minute of the last day before we exit.
Excellent. Sounds fascinating. So what sort of size company is this good for?
Ideally, companies with revenues of 2 million plus, but we can talk to smaller companies, because there is growth that can be done within the virtual merger once they're on board, and up to about 10 million in revenues. That's kind of ideal. 10 million GBP, or so 15 million odd dollars, US dollars.
Okay, thanks. So just take me through how aggregated revenues create the scale value, just so that we can...
Okay, yeah, it's another good question. So what happens is, let's say we do some work in the digital marketing space. So let's take an agency. It's got 3 million in revenues. It's got 500,000 in EBITDA. That's actually a very, very small company in the overall scheme of things. And the challenge with that is that when the owner of a company of that size, this is usually up to about 5 million in revenues, when an owner of that size is trying to sell, it can be actually quite difficult, because it's what we would call a soft business. There's no assets within the business. It's the people and it's the clients. And both of those are quite fluid. So we tend to work with businesses to create a scenario where all of the accounts of all of the companies are aggregated. So at the end of the month, a such and such virtual merger has aggregated revenues of 20 million per year. That becomes valuable to get onto the radar, which is what I do, to put it onto the radar to eventually sell to private equity, family offices, large trade companies. So it's allowing small companies to get the benefit of much, much larger companies when it comes to sell.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I've got that now. Thanks. And in terms of, is this a global opportunity, or is it more specific to certain countries?
No, global for sure. Yeah, global. It's a strategic play, and remember that private equity or any acquirer of groups like this, they want a geographic spread, they want a service spread, they want a revenue spread. So in terms of the currencies as well. So the more the merrier in that sense. Okay.
So in terms of businesses that are suitable for a virtual merger, is there any companies that can join, or any company can join, or is it more a strategy in play here?
Yeah, I mean, we're putting virtual mergers together all the time, but it has to be a strategy. It's not just about revenue, because the thing is, we're always gearing, from the very first day we do this, we're always gearing up to see which private equity company we can sell to. So there is a strategy that we play to. So, for example, in the IT space, there are some companies within that sector we like, and there are some that just won't be a fit. That may be that they are not a fit for that particular virtual merger. They may be a fit for another one. So, we can move it around, but it's definitely strategic. It needs to be. We need to get to a point where I'm sitting down with a private equity company and showing them the information memorandum and saying this is what's to sell. They need to look at it and say, all right, we get that. If they have to look around too much and say, well, what do they do? What do they do? What do they do? That can get tricky. So we try and avoid that.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And in terms of how does the virtual merger add value to the partners? Is there sort of cross-selling or joint venture opportunities within that?
Yeah, absolutely, from day one. So let's say, we'll go back to the digital marketing space. So let's say somebody's interested in getting on board with our virtual merger, and they specialize in SEO. They've got a whole client base. Let's say they've got 100 clients. Out of those 100 clients, how many of those will want content, or will want web design, or will want media buying? The company in question doesn't do that. What they can do is they can hand it off to one of the other people in the group, and they can do a joint venture on that deal. So it allows the internal revenues to increase, but stay within the businesses. So that increases the value as well. So that helps. So we really encourage that cross-selling, that joint venture thing, right from day one. The minute they get on board, they can get involved in deals like that.
Sounds good. So what kind of companies sort of buy these merged groups that you're talking about?
Do you mean who will buy the actual group once it's all put in place? Yeah, okay. So there's three main sectors that we go after. Private equity buy for revenues. So they don't want to buy a discombobulated company. They want to buy a nicely tight-run business, but they're buying for revenues, as are family offices. But we also consider selling out to trade. So there may be a huge company like WPP or C4, S4, C4, I can't remember which one they are. These are companies that are heavily into acquiring businesses. So we would approach them. And so one of the parts that I do is I would go and have meetings with those people and present to them.
Got you. Thanks for that. So you mentioned earlier on about private equity. What experience do you have in working with private equity, Jamie?
Yeah, actually, I'm an advisor to a private equity company in London. I partner with a number of private equity companies, not as an advisor, I just do deals with them. but actually in the advisory capacity, it's a London-based private equity company, and I have private equity company partners in New York as well. So I've got quite a lot of experience in PE. But one thing it is a different world. The private equity world is very different from this. We're in the deal makers world. We put things together that private equity then buys. So this is a numbers world. Ours is deal making and cultures and personalities and really getting the deal done. So what we do, they don't do, and what they do, we don't do. So there's a nice symbiotic arrangement with PE.
Got you. Thanks. Yeah. So you talk about the strategy being de-risked. Can you explain what sort of de-risk means? Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier that there is a risk when you do a merger. There's a number of risks in a normal integrated merger, and one of them is personality. There's just things that may not work, and that can get very, very messy. But let's say that somebody has a content business, they're in digital, or they have some sort of a SaaS offering in the IT world. They get on board with us, but some way down the road, they think, you know what, actually, this is not the right way for us. Or we've got to plan on, things change in business every day, Lindsay. So I wanted our partners who are coming into this to have the ability to say, actually, we've changed, our views have changed, what we want to do, and not be stuck under contracts and not be stuck under licenses and all that stuff. So basically, it's de-risked by saying, once you're on board, if at any time up to the sale, you feel that this is not for you, you can back out. You can just say, all right, we're going to go back to being, the standalone business that we were. And there's no problem with doing that. Yeah. That said, I don't want anyone getting into any of the virtual mergers if they're not planning an exit. This is an exit strategy. The virtual merger, is a strategy to sell as big as we can in, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever the deal is. Yeah. That's why you're doing it. So, as I said, don't get into it, knowing that you can back out. Get into it with the right spirit of saying, we're going to sell this thing in 36 months, whatever it is.
Clear. Thanks. Yeah. And so in terms of when a business owner comes on board into a virtual merger, what changes for them on a day-to-day basis?
Nothing. They run the business exactly as they were running it before. The benefits are, is that they now have a board of directors. Now, let's say, for example, there's 15 other companies in the virtual merger. Every single one of them business owners has exactly the same goal for the next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever the deal term is. And so now you've got a board of directors of this board, and they can jump on Zoom calls, they can have meetings, they can go and have a beer, whatever it is they want to do. And globally, that's a really big advantage to them. So that's the main advantage. But the actual day-to-day running, nothing really. They're in full control of the business.
And so do they stay in charge of their own company?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, nothing changes. If they want to, they can hire, fire, they can do whatever they want within the business. Nothing. Our deal at Rise, Lindsay, is to create, is the wealth creation around what's going on. So we use the structure. We spend the time to meet with the individuals, to have meetings with the owners and so on, but not to run their business, but to say, this is happening within the group. How can we take advantage of that? And there'll be group meetings on Zoom, this kind of interaction as well.
Sure. Thanks for that. So what do Rise do in terms of in the deal?
Okay. So, well, first of all, we're putting the deal together. We are spending our time going out, finding the right companies, having the conversations, kissing a lot of frogs, as we say around the office, kissing the frogs to find the prince, all of that stuff. So the front end of getting everybody on board, getting everybody licensed, getting everybody, on the same song sheet, if you like. While it's ongoing, we are continuously monitoring the businesses. We do a monthly aggregated accounts, and that's reported to everybody. So there's a process that allows us to build the story, so that eventually we go to private equity or trade or family offices and start to present to them. And that usually happens about month 18 or so. Yeah. And that's quite a lot. There's quite a lot involved in that in terms of meetings, in terms of getting all of the memorandums together and so on.
Okay, I understand. Thanks. And in terms of, does Rise get involved in the people who've come on board, the business owners in their business on a day-to-day basis?
Not other than advisory stuff, other than anybody in the merger picking up the phone and booking a call with me or whoever in the team they want to. No, we don't. They know we don't run those businesses. They know how to run those businesses. We know how to run what Rise do. I think that's the best way to put it.
So, in terms of a business owner, what sort of accounts would they need to sort of show to Rise in order to?
Okay, so yeah, good question. So we do monthly management accounts, and we aggregate those, and then those are created by. We'll do a quarterly and then an annual account. Again, it's all about building up the story and giving our input from that side of things.
What in terms of exit time frame, is there a sort of set parameter on that? And what's the sort of terms of the deal?
Yeah, so it's not really a set parameter, but we should look at 36 months because we need a date. But what happens is once I start talking to private equity, they may, using them as an example, they may come to us at month 24 and say, look, we're ready to roll this, or they may come to us. I approach them in month 35 and they're not going to be ready for 6 months. So as a ballpark figure, 36 months from start to finish.
Okay, that's clear. Thanks for that. And in terms of what's Rise's part of the deal, what do they make for creating this exit strategy?
Very simply, 20% of the value of the business. So we create the value. And the delta of the value, what we've added from putting all of this thing together, we take 20% of right at the back end when it's sold.
So that's the value that you brought to the table.
Yeah.
Got you. Thanks for that. And in terms of communication with other CEOs in the virtual merger group, how does that work?
Do you mean between the CEOs or from me to them?
Both, really.
Okay. Well, I'm always available. Anyone who wants to call me can book a call with me, and we can have a Zoom call or just a normal phone call. Happy with that. I deal with my calls UK time at the beginning of the week and US time at the end of the week. Tends to work quite well for me. But for each other, everybody will know each other. They've all got exactly the same goals, so they will have each other's contact details, and they can just pick up the phone or get on the Zoom call and just we're all in on the virtual merger for exactly the same thing to get it to sale.
But is there a set meeting once a month or?
Yeah, so once a month we'll have about an hour's strategy call, which is a management meeting, and that's basically some KPI reporting that says the revenues for the last month or last quarter or whatever, however it transpires, the information that we've got, and then we'll say these are the issues that we all need to be aware of as partners in the deal. Is there any questions on that? This is what's happening, or in my instance, I'll say, look, I've had an approach from a family office who are sniffing around the business and they're interested and they want to have a meeting with us.
Got you. Okay, that's clear. Thanks. So just out of interest, just thinking about this, what if somebody comes into the virtual merger and then decides a little bit down the line it's not for them? What happens next?
They back out. They just back out. They can just say, we need a month's notice. There is the capital at the monthly management fee, which I'm absolutely sure you're going to ask me in a minute, that they paid into the deal. That's done because we've done the work up to that point. But they give us a month's notice. They're not billed for the next month, and then they're free to go. That's as simple as I can make it, Lindsay.
Yeah,
otherwise it's hassle.
Yeah, no, that sounds fair, Jamie. Yeah, understandably. So. You mentioned there's a monthly cost. Just clarify that again. What's the monthly cost for joining the virtual merger?
Very simply, it's £1,000 per month. And that pays for the team that we have getting people on board, and it pays for the accountants to put the accounts together and so on. So it's basically the management cost of the virtual merger. Yeah.
So just clarify again, what do they get for that money?
Okay, so we do the monthly accounts. We do the annual accounts. All of the accounting is taken care of within that. The management of everything. We also have a virtual merger manager who will look after everything and make sure all of the, keeping all the balls in the air kind of stuff. And it's giving, we've got costs, we've got hard costs driving this thing forward, and that pays for that.
So it makes sense. So it sounds an interesting opportunity. What would a company owner need to do if they're interested in taking the next step?
So they need to book a call. We need for an incoming company, we need to understand who they are, what they do. Before any of that happens, I like to have a call, this kind of a conversation, because to me culture is really important, and the fit. We want team players. We don't want somebody who's not a team player, because it just doesn't work. It's just not nice. Mm-hmm. So we want people who are open to ideas, opening to sharing their ideas. And if that sounds like whoever's watching this discussion between you and I, book a call and we'll have a conversation. We'll see if it could work for you.
Okay, and if the business owner wanted an NDA just to feel a bit more relaxed about talking about their business, is that possible?
Yeah, it's not only possible, that's what they should do. And you can just go on to risestrategies.co or .co and you can request an NDA. We'll have it done in a day back with them. And we can have a frank conversation. Yeah,
and just to clarify, that's where the booking for a Zoom call or getting in touch with your deal team, is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah, everything. Just go to the contact section on the website and it's all there. Book a call. It's not a sales call. Talking to me, it's about whether this is a fit. It's all, there's questions that I've got, there's questions that they'll have, and we just go through it. And it's either it's a fit or it's not.
Yeah. No, that's great, Jamie. Thanks very much for your time. I think that's brought a lot of clarity to what virtual mergers is with Rise Strategies. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.